Hey guys, welcome back to Your Gear Sucks, where you can gear better with the gear that you have. Your gear doesn't have to suck, so make sure you tune into the channel and all our new videos because we're going to cover a whole bunch of gear going forward. But today we have a very special guest here, and this is a Fender's Blues Jr, one of the best-selling guitar amps out there. But before we go forward with that, I just want you to subscribe to the channel. If we hit 500, we get to make more of these. I get to monetize it a little bit. It's going to be great. So I really appreciate you guys watching so far. And those who have subbed already, you're awesome. And I make sure to try to answer every question that is in the chat. But you're looking at this and basically saying, it's just a Fender's Blues Jr. Well, big deal. You know, it's one of the most common small combo amps out there. It's still really popular today. It's still one of the best-selling combo amplifiers for guitar, for tube amplifiers out there on the market. I was looking at lists the other day. It's still in like the top 5 of best-selling guitar combo amps, especially tube amps. They're pretty pricey today, and because of that, I don't know if I would be able to afford one of these if I had to buy it brand new out of the store. But fortunately, if you live in a big city or a place that has a robust marketplace, you could still pick one of these up for a few $100. This one I picked up for about, I can't remember, but it was probably close to $250, $300 Canadian. Long time ago, probably 5-6 years ago. That's before that huge guitar boom happened during the pandemic. But nowadays, yeah, it's probably more expensive. I haven't looked recently, but you can still pick them up for relatively inexpensive. This one is a Series 1. So they have the Blues Jr. one, which has all kinds of different boards on them. The cream board, the green board, all kinds of weird configurations. It depends on where they were made. And then they have a Series 2, 3, 4. I believe they're up to 4 now. Mark IV. And each revision of it has different features. Some of the features they implemented in the later versions were ones that were covered by the mod community. A big reason why these are popular is because how easy they are to mod and how popular they are to mod. For those who have modded their Fender's Blues Juniors before, you know there's the Fromel mod kit, the Bill M mod kit. Bill M passed a few years ago, but he was very famous for getting the most out of these amps. Now, a bit of backstory on this amp. When I first got it, I was so underwhelmed with it. I was like, what is the hype about? It sounded weak. It sounded weird. It didn't really have any thrust that I would expect from a tube amp. So I went ahead and I upgraded the speaker in there to the Cannabis Rex speaker. For those of you who mod these, you understand the popularity of that combo with this amp, that speaker in there. So I upgraded it to that and was still underwhelmed by it. I didn't understand what was what. So that's when I first ordered the Fromel kit. I was unable to get my hands on the Bill M mod kit. Now, that's not the most unique thing about this. A lot of people have modded their Blues Juniors to be monsters of sound. But there's something super unique about this one, and I'm going to take you through it. Now, first of all, I'm going to bring it over to here so that you can see it on the overhead. Let's go through just the regular mods on this thing. Let's go to the overhead camera, and I'll just show you a few of them. Let's see here, Cam 5, there we go. All right, and I'll bring that forward for you. Now, right away you can see it's a Series 1 because the lettering is all on this side. On the newer ones, this panel's flipped that way. But you can right away see that it's got a big jewel instead of the small one. So that was a mod that I did a long time ago. And these things still burn out. They're so annoying to replace because you got to resolder it, not like a Hot Rod Deluxe where you can just unscrew it. These ones, I replaced it with an LED bulb in there and a blue jewel. It's a little loose right now, I don't know why. Maybe some of the glue came out. Now the other thing I want to show you is that, boom, it's got a middle standby switch. So it's in standby mode. That comes with the Fromel kit, as well as a better input adapter and a more gradual master volume, so you can have the gradual sound. You can play this bedroom volume. But that's not the biggest modification that this thing has. I'll show you the other Fromel mods when we open it up. But I want to show you real quick. Let's see if I can get this on camera. Let me get this in a better position here. Now, if you look down here, you see a box. And the camera's a little too far to see what it says on that box. But that box right there is an effects send and return. I modded this thing to include an effects send return because I largely wanted to use this as a pedal platform, and I love the fact that effects send and returns on amplifiers give you a lot of versatility when it comes to time-based effects like reverb and delay and some modulation and stuff like that. Now, for those who know anything about the Blues Jr, it does not come stock with an effects send return. None of them do. It's considered a traditional blues style amp. I don't use a lot of the crunch preamp on this one. I'm not happy with the way that sounds, but I do send my crunch pedals into the front on the input there. But for the time-based effects, the reverb on this is pretty good. I mean, I upgraded it to a newer one. I don't know if you can see it. It's like the mod reverb tank, but it's still a small style reverb tank. It gives you pretty decent reverb, but I like using a pedal reverb. The Keeley Caverns is my favorite to use. So if you're using a Keeley Caverns, you want to have that come out after the preamp section into the power amp section through the speakers. Now, it's impossible on a Blues Jr, but I believe there's maybe 2 or 3 out there in the world like this that has an effects send return. And I'm going to see if I can grab it with the regular the remote camera. You can get a little bit of a closer look in here of how it might look like to you. Let's see if we can get a focus on that. Yeah, you can see high, boost, low. Those are basically if I want to increase the signal. And this switch right here, you can't see it. You see it's a bypass switch for the loop. So right now the loop is on, but if I don't want to use the loop, I just switch it to bypass. And that allows the original circuitry to do all its good stuff. Now, it bears mentioning that when it's on, a little bit of bass is shaved off the sound, but that's not a big deal because you can always compensate in your levels. So basically, that is your send, and that is your return that you would normally see on any traditional amps. I'm going to see if I can get this thing open, but before we do that, we'll take off the panel to see how it's wired in. Right now, that green wire down there, that's the power, so it's getting power from the board, and then it's also got a, I don't know if you can see it back here, but there is a ground that's going ground back into the chassis. And it's also on here with a Velcro thing. So I didn't really drill into it. It just sits there nice and pretty out of the way, and we can maybe open that up later to see what that looks like. Now, the board that sits inside this box right here is made by Metro. Metro Effects Loops. They make aftermarket effects loops boards for companies or amps like Fender, Marshall. I've seen them maybe do it for Mesa Boogie. I can't remember. But at the end of the day, they make that cool little board. And it only comes as a PCB board that you then have to mount into a box, or you can mount it inside the chassis, inside, like maybe mount it higher than the typical PCB board that exists inside these things. That's kind of how that works. But for me, there's no space inside a Blues Jr to effectively mount that and allow the cables to go in and out of it. So I did that with it. But we're going to open this thing up real quick so that you can see the innards of where the wires go. So let me switch it to overhead cam, and maybe we'll fast forward the process of opening this thing up. Okay, let's go. All right, so now we take this back panel off. Let it sit up like that. And you can kind of see this one's a made in Mexico. Added some like Fromel and like Bill M stickers on it. But yeah, you can kind of see the series. It's a series 1. And we got our power tubes here. We got our preamp tubes here. You can see the new caps that are in there. This thing's been off for a long time, so I'm sure they're drained. We can tinker around in here a little bit. Now you can see where I'm drawing power from. This one is, let's see, let's go in real close on this one. See if I can get close enough. Not sure I can get close. It's gonna, yeah. Believe that's an R28 at the top there, the resistor. That's where it's drawing power from. And then you can see here, believe, yeah, that's where the ground. So this unit here, going close, you can see the green and the red. The red is attached to the outside of this thing here, so this whole thing is grounded, and then the green is drawing power. That's basically it. And you can see the other, like, the Fromel mods, like I believe these guys were replaced. Can't remember much else about what I did with this. And then that's the aftermarket kind of floating input, so it doesn't destroy that. Another thing that was replaced there, those guys were replaced, and then the new switching for standby. But yeah, the most unique thing that is this thing though, which we'll get into in a bit. Now that I have this thing open, I'm going to see if I can pry this thing loose. And maybe we can see if we can open it up. I'm not sure if there's going to be enough slack there to do it. But if we can, you'll get to see how it's made up. I really like, I popped this thing on here with really strong Velcro. I'm not sure if I can pry it loose, but hopefully I can. There you go. Come on. Get there. Just don't want to snap somewhere. Let me draw something loose. All right, there we go. All right, let's see if I can bring it up and around. Get this kind of wire out of the way. All right, here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to pop this thing back on so that we can rest the kit up top here. Maybe in a way that helps it rest pretty easy, and we'll get to take a look at it. Now, I'm going to unscrew this top and we'll take a look, but before we do that, take a look. You can see effects and return. Metro Zero Loss Effects Loop. That's what it's called. And yes, we got our low and high boost. I have it on high, and then we have our effects loop on and then bypass in case we don't want to use it. Pretty cool. All right, let's open this puppy up and take a look at the insides of it. Trusty pick to pry it open. There we go. Now you can see on the inside here, there's not much to it. It's a little PCB board that does funky things. And these switches here I had to get myself. and assemble them in there so that I had the ability to switch. It has some dip switches here too that you can configure so that it allows for that, I believe. Let me go take a look. And there's a little bit of, not sure. So let's take a closer look in here. And I'll get the pencil out so you're able to see some stuff. Now, when you get the kit, and you can see the wiring, it comes with the wiring, I believe. I don't think it comes with these guys. These guys I had to get. In the case, I had to get extra as well. Now, this resistor here comes with a stack of resistors, but the resistor you have to configure according to your power input, because it being too low or too high, it's not going to do the right thing. You can see there's a variable pot right there, which I believe you have to adjust as well. And all the instructions, if you have some kind of basic understanding of how to solder and what resistors do and how to measure them and stuff, you can get this done on your own. This was literally my first soldering project, believe it or not. I had to do a lot of research on it, but I was able to get it done. But yeah. So the high-low boost works, and the on-off works as well using that thing. But that's pretty much what it is. You can see it's a tiny little thing. Now these things you have to drill, use any old metal drill bit to go through and assemble these switches on. But yeah, it's a pretty basic little board, and it's awesome. Basic and mighty, which is the greatest, right? And I also had to drill this access hole for the power and for the sound. I don't believe we covered the sound input and output points on the board, so we'll do that once we get this thing reassembled. And you can see how I popped the ground on. The ground is here, and you can see inside there that the ground is directly connected to that nut as well. Similarly. So yeah, it's all grounded. You know, this is high power. It is properly grounded, so as if it were sitting inside the native chassis as it sits. Okay, so let me get that reassembled. I took you through that, and we'll see where the audio in and out points are going to be going into it. And yeah, I put some shrink tubing on it just to consolidate it nicer. We'll see the way that works. All right, let's go to the overhead again, reassemble. Okay, let's take this thing off again and wedge that back in properly where it's supposed to be. I believe I have it so that it sits behind this wire here and all the way down. There we go. Now, the reason I use really strong Velcro is because when you're pulling in and out, you're putting your 1/4 inch in and out. You don't want this thing to come off the wall. That's why it's so hard to get out, so I'm just wedging it so it stays in there nice. Now, the access points. I believe one is here, and the other one is here. I think that's it right there. Those are the 2 access points for the sound. Let me get closer in on that. So this, I believe, is the preamp out, and then this is the power amp in. Pretty simple. You just resistor point, solder them to those points, and you go forward with that. Pretty easy. Again, just to look at it, that's the power. In, out, those, and then your ground over here. So really 4 points to get this thing to work. Switching it back to overhead. Okay. Now that we got this thing, gave it a little bit of a walkthrough of it, you can see why I'm saying that this thing is pretty unique. Like, having an effects send return just really maximizes the versatility of this amp, because you can use it as an incredibly clean pedal platform, especially for those lush reverbs and delays and anything that has to do with any sound that is environmental or spatial, that you don't want to crunch up using the preamp tone shaping. You just want it to go shape whatever's coming in the front and have it go through the power amp section. So that's super important when you're using pedals that have a lot of distortion or drive on them, which I use, and especially with this guy. I want all that stuff to also get colored, drive the preamp channel on this, and then get all processed nice and nice. And then right before it hits the power amp section, I want some reverb to, with the Keeley pedal, I want some reverb to color it nicely and just give it that nice, warm, environmental sound. So I'm going to get this assembled back up, and we'll be back in a second, and I'm going to have the pedal board, we're going to hook the pedal board up to it, and you're going to be able to hear some sounds coming out of it. Hopefully it still works after I've pulled things apart and moved things around. All right, let's get this thing back together. I'll go grab the pedal board. Now, this is one of my pedal boards that I had at home. Again, like, this is a, you're gonna laugh at the pedal board, but it's one of the videos that is gonna be on the channel. You'll be like, why does it have all these crazy wires sticking out of it? So, this pedal board is actually built. I built this pedal board for 10 bucks, and it's amazing because it just fits in a backpack. The effects don't go anywhere, and it has everything I need. I mean, like, I have this kind of weird modulating effects unit here. This one, I believe, is a compressor. Yeah, it's a compressor, just a basic compressor because it's nice to have. The dual gun is basically a clone of the Dualist, which is one of my favorite drive. If you guys ever have a chance to get a Dualist or a dual gun, which is the clone of it, do so. These are fantastic pedals. They're basically two drive pedals put into one, but they can also go into overdrive, distortion, and then your typical blues crunch. They're super versatile. A friend of mine, I saw him playing the Dualist at a local gig, and I was like, what the hell is that? So I had to pick one up. They weren't available, so I picked up the clone of it, and the clone is just as good. This is a Donner circle looper. It's actually one of my favorite loopers because of its ease of use, its versatility, and it's got a lot of beats in it. And we got our Keeley Caverns, which is going to go through the effects loop. The looper, I believe, and the, okay, so the compressor is going to take our input, and the compressor is going to go into the drive. The drive is going to go into our input, right? The looper and the Caverns and the Vision Joyo Vision, which is like a multi-effects kind of all-in-one unit. Not a big fan of this. It should have actually a level control. It always comes in quieter when you kick it in, which is kind of annoying. But I just have it on here so I can fool around with sounds without having a million pedals on my board. But yeah, so this goes into the standard input on the Blues Jr. And then these two here, I'm just going to get to in a second here, drop those wires off. Now these two here, you're going to see, it says, I don't know if you can see it, but it says send from amp. And then this one is return, right? So this is going to go into the send return, and that's coming out of the looper and going back into, it's coming into the Vision and going back out through the looper. So basically, the signal chain as we have it here, this goes into the front of the amp, gets processed through the preamp, comes back out, goes through modulation. From modulation, it goes to reverb, I believe. And from reverb, it goes to the looper. And then from the looper, it goes back into the amp, into the power section. And the reason I have it set up this way is that when you have a sound that you like and you want it looped, you can actually adjust afterwards. And the loop sound is going to sound as it does. And then your adjusted sound afterward is going to sound different. So you can do a lead sound, like kick in both dual amps and or the dual drives, and it's going to be different than what you recorded on the looper. That is the beauty of having an effects loop. Not everything's going to be affected by the preamp channel, and that's why I have it set up this way. So let me turn it this way. I'm not even sure what the levels are like on this thing because it's been kind of moved around a lot, but we are going to plug this in. All right. Let's go. I'm going to switch cameras to maybe front. Cam 1. Okay. So this is going to go into our input. Let me see if I can get the input on the overhead. Barely. Let's bring it over a little bit more. Right. Okay. So red wire coming out of there, going into our input, right? Then the send goes into the out from the amp. This is sending the signal to the Joyo, and then the return goes into the return, right? So I'm going to switch cameras and maybe we can catch what it looks like going back in here. All right, let's take a look. Okay, so effects return, which is this guy here. So let's do the send first. Okay, so send goes in, return goes in, and that should be it. So the effects and return are in the pedal board. Now it's time I'm going to plug in the power. Again, we're still on standby. Still on standby in the amp. And I believe everything will be powered by this. Yep, everything turns on nice. You can see. Now, like I said, I'm worried about levels and stuff, but at the end of the day, things should still work. Get my trusty guitar here. I don't even know if this is in tune, but you're going to be able to demonstrate what I mean with this stuff, right? Okay, so everything's on, That works. We'll keep that off, and we're going to turn the amp on. Hopefully that works. Again, I haven't turned this on in a long time. Well, there you can hear it. So right now you can hear it's just a completely dry signal because I have the reverb turned off. Turning on one of the dualists, which is turned all the way down. That's why it sounded quieter. But let's say I want to crank it a little bit. We'll crank the first dualist drive channel to maybe half. You're going to hear it kick in. You can see, okay, and then go into another dualist, which is also all the way up to half. Oh, the volume's all the way down though. You can see how kind of awesome that is. Now, don't have a microphone hooked up, so maybe that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put a mic in front of this right now, and so that you guys can be able to hear this a little bit better than coming through my microphone. Okay, now that we have this mic'd up, I'm gonna walk you through what it sounds like, and hopefully we'll get some decent sound coming out of it so that you guys can understand why an effects loop is so important. So if I go back on top, let me just walk you through it. The distortion is coming through, and maybe even the compressor is gonna go into the preamp, drive it, push those nice tube sounds the way it's supposed to, and then it's gonna come back out, go through our time-based effects and our looper. I'm not gonna test the looper today, but I'm gonna test the reverb and delay. So you're gonna hear a nice lush thickness be applied to that nice tube-driven sound. That nice lush reverb and delay is going to be popped out straight cleanly through the power amp section, and that's all due to being able or having an effects loop. Effects send in and return. I swear by them just because it allows you to dial in your sound perfectly. So we're going to do some testing here of what that sounds like versus, you know, the reverb section on the Fender Blues Jr. Let me make sure that that's in. It sounds pretty good. It's not bad. So we'll test that out first, and then we'll go through the functions here. Let's go. Okay, that's on. Okay, that's just a dry sound going into the Blues Jr. You can hear it all go through. I might be out of tune a little bit, but I'm not going to even bother tuning right now for the purpose of this. And this is the built-in Fender Blues Jr. reverb. Nice spring reverb, not bad. Bring the treble up a little bit more. Crank. Sounds not bad. Sounds pretty good. I like that, but let's turn it back to dry because that's going to allow us to really dial in our sound here. Now, again, going over it, the Dualist or the Dual Gun, which is a Dualist clone. These wires are all over the place, but you understand. You understand. Yeah, the Dualist clone here, it just drives, and it's going to drive the amp. It's going to saturate it nicely. The preamp section, saturate it nicely, and then that's going to come out cleanly through here, and we're going to thicken it up with reverb and delay, and you'll see the value of that. So let's just really go into a drive section here. I'm going to bring it each drive channel to about 50%. So again, this is a drive on drive pedal, 2 drive pedals in one. Pretty good. Sounds pretty nice. I really like it. Bring the bass down a little bit. Add for some more clarity. It's just 1 channel on the Dualist on right now. 2 channels. Now, what if we want to really crank it? Crank both. nice. So when we're cranking it like that, we don't want to add a reverb on top of that because it's pushing the tubes, driving them, and making it sound extra warm, but it would also be distorting the reverb. And we don't want that. We want a nice lush reverb applied on top of that. So let's just start with one channel there. And we're gonna get the reverb going. Let me actually take this off so you can hear reverb. Nice lush reverb coming from the Keeley Caverns, which I really like. Because it allows you effects like a reverb and delay all built into one. So we got the reverb on this one. I believe that's a spring reverb on there right now. Just dialed in a little bit, no modulation, pretty decent tail on it. Now let's get the crunch going, so you're going to hear that lushness applied on top of the crunch. So you're actually getting a natural reverb sound on top of that crunch. Now just one. You can hear that reverb is still nice and lush on top of it. There's no distortions, no weird artifacts, no muddiness that typically happens when you distort reverb. Add a delay on there so you'll really kind of hear it. The reverb and the delay are nice and clean, and that's because they're going through only the power amp section, pulling in signal from the preamp section. And I don't want any comments. I don't want anyone leaving comments making fun of my pedal board. I love it, okay? We all have our love affairs in life, and mine happens to be with a janky looking $10 pedal board that has been with me for years. But yeah, that showcases exactly why it is nice to have an effects loop in your Blues Jr. and why this one is so special. It's not hard to do. I'm going to link down in the description down below to Metro Zero Loss effects loop, wherever they exist now. I haven't looked it up in a long time. And any other gear we've used in here will be also linked in the description in case you want to pick it up. Maybe I'll find some of these pedals as well for you to pick up. And if you're here already, please subscribe because we are going to get to 500 and I'd be able to monetize this channel a little bit, and it'll allow us to make more here on Your Gear Sucks. I appreciate everyone who's watched our videos so far, and we'll see you in the next one.